Dana White's one name in the MMA circuit that you've obviously heard before. As the king of MMA, he's apparently a self-made family man. But after a recent unauthorized biography about him written down by his mother, Julie, suggests that things aren't always as they seem. For one, he's not picture perfect, much to the disappointment of his fans and admirers. Stay tuned, cause we'll be discussing the tea-spilling autobiography of Dana White and more. First of all, here's what Dana White's mother had to say about him. Okay, so here's the tea. In 2011, Dana White's mother, June, published an unauthorized biography of her son called Dana White, King of MMA. At the same time, in that year, big plans were happening at UFC. They had just bought Strikeforce. While White was climbing the ladder of success, his mother's book made some interesting revelations about him that, well, could do some decent damage to his image. According to White's mother, her son changed, rather became an entirely different person altogether as the UFC itself transformed from a near bankrupt brand to the largest fight promotion in the entire world. Now, what exactly did Dana's mother write in the unauthorized autobiography, Dana White, King of MMA? That's got everyone so worked up. June accused her son of turning from a caring person to a vindictive tyrant. How'd that happen? Well, after taking a look into the autobiography, we got to know that White's mother outlined how it felt observing her son's drastic change. She said it was difficult for her to see how, as UFC became popular and evolved, technically so did her son. Only the change wasn't positive, because he became someone who was egotistical, self-centered, arrogant, and cruel. June also expressed disgust with the repeated use of the F word in her son's comments, something we're guessing he didn't do as frequently as before. We understand where June's coming from. No mother wants to accept that their child's changed into someone who they can't even recognize, especially when your son's not being considerate of others. We know you might be confused, but don't worry, we're going to discuss this aspect in a bit. Coming up, has White always been like this? No, he wasn't always like this. According to Dana's mother, he used to be a truly nice person, a good son, and a friend. But somewhere along the line, once fame and power got to his head, he went from being a perfect model son to what June describes as a vindictive tyrant who didn't care for anyone's feelings and didn't even care about how he treated his friends and loved ones. She shared that Dana worked hard to portray herself as the perfect example of a self-made man, one who's also battled several difficulties in his childhood to reach where he is today currently. But June immediately busted this story in her book, stating that the image of her son struggling around as a kid in the streets of Connecticut was far from reality. And from the looks of things, she wasn't exactly happy at the fact that the UFC president was being untruthful. When June confronted Dana about it, he responded defensively and asked his mother, "Who the f do you think you are, talking to me like that? No one talks to me that way." Yikes. As you can imagine, after this not-so-friendly conversation, June shared that she and her son weren't on speaking terms for quite some time. She also wrote in the book that her blood pressure must have been on stroke level after their talk because of his reply. Plus, she couldn't understand where things went wrong for him to react this way, but figured that it must have been the power and money that got to her son's head. Next up, White's relationships with his family have always been rocky. June claimed in Dana White, King of MMA, that ever since his success with the UFC, Dana had turned his back on his family and friends, people who had always been there for him when he needed help and support. Now that's awkward. In her book, June White described a story which basically accused her son of neglecting his grandmother, who was about 93 years old at the time of the book's release, way back in 2011. According to White's mother, the UFC boss didn't provide any financial assistance to his grandmother. And yeah, you might think, okay, but why does she need extra money in the first place? Well, it's cause she's been living in a trailer park for 40 years. We repeat, she was in a trailer park for 40 years, and he did nothing to help his old grandma out. And from the looks of things, Dana and his grandmother used to be super close, because when his family lived in Las Vegas, grandmother included, she was the one who'd drive him to school and make dinner for him. And then in 2011, living in a trailer park, her grandson didn't do anything to help her out, cause the issue was that she lived on a very tiny, almost little to nothing monthly retirement check. June felt the least he could have done was to make sure that she doesn't have to stress over having money for everyday living expenses at her age. Since the story's publication, it's been claimed that Dana wrote his grandmother a check of $5,000, but that was about 8 years ago when he wrote the check. What's more, his relationship with his wife isn't picture perfect. Dana's mother said that his marriage is a laughingstock, and get this, apparently he even sleeps with the ring girls. But wait, it gets even worse. June said that once she was furious because she got to know that he slept with his sister-in-law in her house. Now that would make for one interesting Thanksgiving dinner. His mother also stated that the UFC boss usually gets any girl he wants and that he and his wife fight all the time. In fact, June detailed that on the couple's honeymoon, Anne gave him the worst bruise under the eyes that she'd ever seen. A video from New Year's Eve surfaced in which the UFC president and his wife were seen fighting, which then escalated to the point that Anne and Dana were slapping each other. Obviously, the White couple had to come into the spotlight to explain this issue. White stated that he loves Anne, who's both his wife and best friend, while Anne, on the other hand, stated that she and her husband have been married for almost 30 years and that her husband's actions seem out of character to her, mainly cause this was totally out of the ordinary for them. She also clarified that they've been drinking a lot on New Year's Eve and things basically got out of control on both sides. Following the video scandal, the couple has since apologized to each other and even decided to take on a mature route in which they opted for healthy communication. Right now, though, they just want the media and the UFC fans to give them privacy to process what happened. Moving on, here's how Julie described her son's birth. Dana White, king of MMA, detailed that White had actually been a major source of hardship for his parents ever since his birth. Yikes! Talk about a huge spoiler. Anyway, the author recalled that when Dana was born, his parents were in a really tight situation money-wise. To that point, they couldn't even cover the hospital bills. This made them feel like they were in a hostage situation. She wrote that the new parents had to set up a payment plan while the obstetricians cared for June, even though the plan was only supposed to be for like 2 months. But when she was discharged from the hospital after the baby was born, the couple had to make a pit stop at the billing office on their way out of the hospital. And here's the messy part of the story. The billing department staff told the couple that they couldn't leave the hospital without paying the bill in full because they didn't have any insurance. It's safe to say that June was extremely stressed out. She wrote in the autobiography that she remembered overthinking about what would happen to her and her husband if they missed a payment. Would they make them return the baby? Now that's a valid concern for a new parent. In his mother's eyes, Dana was causing his parents problems and costing plenty from the moment he was born. And as White grew older, things only got worse, especially when June watched her child turn into an ugly beast, all thanks to the huge amount of power he had gained. Last but not least, here's how people reacted to the slapping scandal. ESPN's biggest star, Stephen A. Smith, addressed the slap recently on the broadcaster's show First Take, in which he clarified there's no circumstance in which a man should put his hands on a woman, but then did a U-turn of sorts and instead hopped onto the damage control bandwagon for White. He said that Dana White is not just somebody he knows through sports, but is a good friend of his, one whom he loves, and that Dana knows he's done something extremely wrong and is even aware of the fact that they're on air. Something was told about ahead of time thanks to Stephen reaching out to him in the morning to share that the star would discuss the scandal. Stephen then ended his statement by adding that White is aware of the fact that he's crossed a line, one that's never been crossed before on his watch. Here's how netizens reacted. Most of Twitter was mad at all the Dana White supporters, arguing that the UFC president had the option of walking away but didn't, and added that the alcohol isn't to blame, rather he's simply low-key a wife beater. One Twitter user commented that Dana White boxed his wife on camera and got less heat than Will Smith. Others tweeted that Dana should be canceled, though there were some netizens who felt that the whole incident was a private matter and that the internet should move on. Some Twitter users even instructed that no one knows what led to the moment caught on camera, so it's best not to judge. What do you guys think? That's a wrap for this video. What did you think about the tell-all unauthorized autobiography of the UFC president? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this, and we'll see you in the next one.